Just say right off the bat, I don't have any ice. I'm not going to be chewing on any ice, but it's all right. I have some IKEA furniture I'm going to put together.
All right, that sounds like a good plan. Yes, Matt is referring to, of course, last week's episode with Ryan Johnson. And I just want to say to our listeners that, so you guys know, that was perhaps one of the most polarizing episodes in the history of the /Filmcast, with tons of people writing in and tweeting and saying, this guy is awesome, you should have him on every week. And then some people saying, you should never have him on again for the rest of your lives. So we've heard,
kind of like the last time Ryan Johnson.
Exactly. So basically, we've heard your feedback. I just want people to know, your feedback is valuable. And we will plan accordingly. I mean, at this point, we have Ryan on about once a year. In fact, it's literally almost once, every 50 episodes. So I think we'll probably maintain that rate, and that'll be comfortable for everyone. So I think that'll be good. Anyway, if you're just tuning in for the first time, you should know that we typically broadcast live on Sunday nights at /film.com/live at 10 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. We begin by discussing what we've been watching, move on into a dissection of the week's film news, and then conclude with one in-depth review. This week we'll be reviewing Green Lantern, the newest film directed by Martin Campbell, starring Ryan Reynolds and Blake Lively. One other announcement I have just in terms of administrative stuff is just that next week there will be no /Filmcast. So deepest apologies for that. We're going to take a week off because there's basically nothing really coming out that week, with the exception of Jake Kasdan's Bad Teacher. But no major releases really. No /Filmcast next Sunday night and no episode during the week. And the following week we'll be having a special episode just to review Transformers Dark of the Moon. So that should be a lot of fun as well, and it'll be just a 1 hour review of that film. So that's what's going on in the /Filmcast in the near future. Finally, before we get things off to a start in what we've been watching this week,
can we take a moment to just clear up any preconceptions people might have that we're not doing it because it's Transformers? I just feel like it's important for us to acknowledge that.
We're not doing because it's Transformers?
We're not doing an hour review strictly because it's the Transformers movie.
Well, why are we doing it then, Adam?
Because of a variety of scheduling issues.
Oh, yeah.
I just don't want people to think that we're Transformers Dark of the Moon. We really got to do solely a review of that and nothing else.
I see what you're saying. Yeah, no, that is not why. That's going to be on July 3rd that we're going to be recording that, or before that, actually. We might not even record on July 3rd. But yes, it's due to scheduling issues that we're only doing that review and nothing else that week. So don't think that we prize Transformers in a special place in our hearts, even though that's arguably true. Anyway, let's move on. So one thing I wanted to follow up on with our discussion last week during the /Filmcast After Dark. We discussed during the /Filmcast After Dark, which I'd actually encourage everyone to listen to because it was really entertaining time with Ryan Johnson. We talked about South Park, and Adam Quigley directed me to a clip with the creators of South Park. And let me just say before we even get into any of this is that, I think South Park is it's near and dear to my heart, and certainly it's had an impact on the entertainment culture in the U.S. The thing won a Peabody Award, which is pretty insane if you think about it. So it's still, in my opinion, an important property. And a few months ago, Adam Quigley pointed me to this clip in which the series creators discuss their thoughts on working on the show this season.
How many seasons has South Park, the TV show, been in production?
We're coming up on, this is our 15th season.
15 seasons!
Yeah.
And the question I get a lot, and I guess everybody gets a lot, is it fun? Do you still enjoy it? Is it fun?
It's not fun. It's work. You know, it's not fun to do. But people think that we just go and sheen all day long and come up with a show.
Right.
But it's real work. That's what he does. But no, we actually, it's hard to complain about that job because it's obviously we're really blessed to have it. But it is work when you're doing it. Having done it, we're really proud of what we've done.
How many do you do in a season?
We do 7, 2 runs of 7. Mm-hmm. So.
Yeah, so we got 14 for the 15th season.
So when you in the off season, you look back and you think, that turned out pretty well.
Yeah, we do. But doing it, it's just it's not the fun.
Or we get in trouble or something.
So that was from a clip from David Letterman's show, and that was Trey Parker and Matt Stone discussing how they feel like South Park is work. And I think Adam Quigley made the really good point about how when you consider your creative thing to be primarily work, then it's basically downhill from there. Now, last week, Trey Parker and Matt Stone won a crap ton of Tonys for their newest musical, Book of Mormon, which is, I think, a pretty awesome, based on the soundtrack alone, a pretty awesome musical. And they had this to say on The Daily Show this week.
You had to go, so you finish Book of Mormon, you open it, and then you run right back to do the South Park season. Was there any part of you in your minds after all this where you thought, you know what, that? We're tired.
Not really, because we love South Park. That's still our thing.
It's still so good. It's still so good. I love the cynicism episode.
Yeah.
The last one.
Well, that's what was so funny. We did that last episode. We really did it, by the seat of our pants, and obviously it had a lot of themes and things we were feeling in it, but we came back and people were like, are you okay? Like, is the show coming back? And we're like, yeah, we had a really good time doing that. It was fun, and we don't know what's going to happen, but we'll figure it out in August.
Also, Comedy Central's let us say.
So, quite a turnaround since a few months ago, in my opinion. And I have no idea what their inner lives are like, but I have a feeling Book of Mormon and the success it has had something to do with it. So, Adam, any reaction to that, just out of curiosity?
That clip's kind of a bummer to hear.
Which one?
The second one, because I don't know, I thought they had accepted that South Park has gotten bad and they kind of need to end it. But it seems like they acknowledge it within the show, and yet they're still planning to continue it?
Yeah. Someone made a really good comment on the Filmcast After Dark this week saying that episode was kind of addressed towards people like you, of like them acknowledging some of the issues with it, but maybe
people that are cynical assholes, basically.
Yeah, exactly. But maybe they're sort of reinvigorating their efforts. Who knows?
I mean, I could understand if people took that away from strictly like the first half of the episode, but the second half of the episode, it like acknowledges that Stan is right in a lot the ways, like about how cynical he is towards the world, because like everything is shit. Like you're surrounded by stuff that's terrible, and then they acknowledge that the actual show has become terrible. So I don't know how you could strictly take away that. Yeah, but it's a little weird that, I mean, I think it's like unprecedented for a show to actually just outright acknowledge its own badness, and then especially like to continue it after that. That's kind of bizarre.
Well, we'll see what happens in the fall when the show comes back, and it'll be interesting to see if the episodes improve in quality. I mean, who knows? Like, I have no idea what these guys' lives are like. Maybe like this whole Book of Mormon thing has really like gotten their creative juices flowing again, and they have a new love for what they do. Who knows? So let's wait and see. But suffice to say, yeah, there does seem to be a turnaround in terms of what they feel towards the show, and maybe we'll see that reflected in the quality of the episodes. So I just wanted to follow up on that. Let's move on into what we've been watching this week. Matt Singer, what have you been watching this week?
Well, this week I started watching some films from the upcoming New York Asian Film Festival, which is a really great film festival if you're in the New York area. It runs, I think it starts the very beginning of July, and it's an annual festival all dedicated to Asian cinema. And predominantly it's sort of the more mainstream side of Asian cinema, sort of like the equivalent of, big Hollywood blockbusters of Asia, the films that are sort of just the mainstream entertainments that we don't get over here as much. And I've watched a few films, all of them very good. The one I decided to talk about, though, is this one that actually has a distributor, so it will be coming out, I believe, this fall. I didn't look up to check if it has a specific date yet or not. The name of the film is BKO, Bangkok Knockout. It's directed by Panna Ridikrai, I think. And that gentleman is actually Tony Jaa's mentor. He was also the stunt coordinator and choreographer on Ong Bak. He directed Ong Bak 2 and Ong Bak 3, and several other movies that I haven't seen. And to give you the sort of the log line or the, like if someone was pitching this movie at a Hollywood studio, they would say it's sort of The Hangover, or The Hangover Part 2, since it is Bangkok, meets The Running Man meets Ong Bak. So it's about a stunt team who believe that they've been chosen to go to Hollywood to make a movie for this powerful producer with the awesome name of Mr. Sneed, and they celebrate their new gig with a catered dinner, and they treat their caterers very poorly. A lesson for all of us to be nice to our caterers, because then they wake up the next morning, they've been drugged. They wake up in this massive abandoned construction site complex where the caterers all turn out to be martial arts killers looking to destroy them for the amusement of rich capitalists who are watching them fight on monitors and wagering on the fights with the mighty Mr. Sneed. Movie takes a little while to get going. There's a lot of kind of strange and seemingly unimportant plot in the beginning, but once the fighting starts, it just never stops, basically. So like the last hour of or maybe hour and 15 minutes of a almost 2-hour movie is just nonstop fighting. And all the fights are different too. You don't get bored. There's no repetition. Some have weapons. There's one that's like involving fire, and there's one in a cage where they're climbing all over the cage. There's one dude who has his armor and he's like giant and you can't hurt him. There's even a fight under a truck, a moving truck at one point. And I think all of the actors pretty much are basically just stuntmen. They're like the director's actual stunt team. So, you know, you don't get a lot of great acting, but you do get a lot of people who can do all their own stunts, which is pretty fantastic. And it's really incredibly entertaining. It's really shameless and very, very, very awesome. It's playing at the New York Asian Film Festival next month, but it's been acquired by Magnet, and they're going to release it. I'm sure it'll get one of those, you know, theatrical and VOD combo releases. That would be my guess. And I think that's supposed to be this fall, though I could be mistaken. So BKO Bangkok Knockout. If I called it Bangkok Dangerous at any point, I apologize. Yeah. It's very hard to not call it that.
I wish that was Bangkok Dangerous.
Yeah, I mean, that's an appropriate title as well.
Yes.
It is dangerous in Bangkok in this film. There are also knockouts, though, so that's equally appropriate. But yes,
Matt, have you seen Ninja Kids yet? I
haven't seen Ninja Kids. They sent me. I asked for some screeners, and they sent me a bunch, and they unfortunately did not send me that one. That's the new Takashi Miike film,
and it is about fighting schools of ninja kids. I must see this movie.
Yeah, it looks awesome. I haven't gotten to see that one. I've seen a few others. Mostly, all the stuff I've watched so far is Korean. I love the Korean films, so most of the stuff I've been watching, other than Bangkok Knockout, has been Korean revenge movies. They have a whole sidebar of Korean revenge movies, so I've been watching a lot of those.
Very cool. So that sounds pretty awesome, Matt. So I look forward to checking it out.
Look for that one whenever it gets released.
Yeah, I Magnet, they do good work. They do the distribution for these kind of indie quirky movies that we might not otherwise get to see. So I'm excited about that. Devindra Hardwar, what have you been watching this week?
Oh yeah, this week I saw Page One Inside the New York Times, and this is the documentary that it spends a year at the New York Times media desk. And it just kind of shows like the this whole transitionary period they're going through, where you have like new media companies, you have blogs, and you have younger sites like what is it, Vibe, I believe, or no,
VBS.
Yes.
Or Vice.
Vice. I'm sorry.
Yes, I'm sorry. Vice. Yes. But yeah, younger sites like that who are taking on the New York Times with cheaper to produce content, stuff that costs a lot less and doesn't involve high level reporting. And it follows David Carr, who is a really interesting character, and one of the head guys at the media desk over there. Dave, I know you saw this movie and I think you really enjoyed it, right?
I enjoyed it, but I think I made these criticisms when I talked about the film a few weeks ago, that it doesn't really add that much new to the conversation. Like, I follow this stuff on a daily basis to begin with, so it doesn't really add that much new. It's basically all about, and it's very one-sided, it's all about how awesome the New York Times is and how important it is that the New York Times stays alive, and it doesn't really address in my opinion, any of the interesting questions of, like, how the New York Times is going to survive. Like, it pays lip service to, like, how it's like a really beleaguered organization and it's bleeding money and all these things, but it never really explores how it will actually weather the oncoming storm.
Maybe that's because they don't really know.
Exactly. But I mean, even the paywall, for example, that they recently put up, like, there's no discussion of that. It's basically all about.
Well, they talk about it.
I mean,
there's
for
no
like
there's
3
no
minutes,
revenue being listed or anything.
Exactly,
which would have been nice, but they're playing all that close to the chest.
Right.
But they raise all these questions. They don't quite answer them. But this movie is sort of like the inconvenient truth of movies about the state of affairs at the New York Times, I guess. So yeah, if you've been following this, you probably won't learn too much new from it. But for people who just kind of have a passing knowledge of what's going on, or they are seeing these newspapers dying, but maybe they haven't thought too much about what that means, I think this film really kind of just it paints a good picture of what the New York Times represents, what big newspapers represents too, and how losing them could be a bad thing. So it does raise some interesting questions. I found it really fascinating And yeah, it does kind of it explores this idea of New York Times exceptionalism. The people who work there just kind of become in love with the institution. But it also, I think, it probably succumbs to that.
Yeah, I don't think like explores is a good term so much as succumbs, as you said.
Yeah.
And I think describing it as similar to Inconvenient Truth is doing an Inconvenient Truth a great disservice in terms of how, I guess, methodical that film is, or even methodical Al Gore's lecture is. Michael Kinsley published his review of page 1 inside the New York Times in the New York Times. You can read this review at nytimes.com, and it is a devastating critique of the movie. It is like, I just love how he lays into this film, and I agree with basically everything that Michael Kinsley says in this review. The movie, I'm going to quote from the review here. The movie's main theme, no surprise, is the struggle of the Times to survive in the age of the internet, but it does little to illuminate that struggle, preferring instead a constant parade of people telling the camera how dreadful it would be if the Times did not survive. True, of course, but boring to the point of irritation after 5 or 6 repetitions. Like a shopper at the supermarket without a shopping list, page 1 careens around the aisles, picking up this item and that one, ultimately coming home with 3 jars of peanut butter and no 2% milk. Among other issues, the movie takes up, in rough order, WikiLeaks, the Pentagon Papers, more WikiLeaks, the survival issue, Gay Talese and his famous book on the Times, Comcast purchase of NBC Universal, the impact of Twitter, the danger of not sending reporters on trips with the president, and how ABC has had to lay off 400 people. So end quote right there. But yeah, I agree. It's pretty episodic. It's pretty unfocused. But, there is cool stuff in this movie. Like, for example, David Carr wrote this pretty awesome expose about the Tribune Company. And it was like, when I read it, I don't remember how long it was like 5,000 words or something. It was very long. I remember reading it a few months ago when it came out. Mm-hmm. And then to see him put that article together.
Yeah, see him fight the sources, to see him yell, deal with lawyers and crap. I found that pretty fascinating.
That's really fascinating. Yeah, exactly. Mm-hmm. So there is, like, for like a news junkie like me, like there is cool stuff to be had, but it's nothing more than a surface level exploration of the major issues facing journalism today, and also like kind of a very episodic look at some of the stuff that some of the
that's
specific
basically
topics.
Why I called it an Inconvenient Truth, because that's really all that movie was. I mean, it's better. That movie is better made, and I think it also obsesses over Al Gore. I guess in a more professional way. I don't know. It's somehow, but yeah, they're similar in terms of how they go about things. I think if you have any passing interest in the state of media affairs, but you haven't really followed it like the hardcore folks, it's worth a watch. And David Carr is just a great guy.
He is really cool. You get a lot of respect for him watching this movie. And in fact, Devindra, the movie was originally supposed to be a documentary about David Carr.
Mm-hmm. I'm not surprised.
Yeah,
he's
and
really
they
interesting character.
Yeah, they kind of changed it to be about the paper itself. He's not only an interesting guy, like an amazing writer. I love his writing.
Yeah,
it's very good. So,
and the best part of this movie is seeing David Carr like rip apart some kids from Vice. Or,
they're not kids. They're like head guys. Yeah.
Yeah. It was we shot these videos over in Africa, and then he was like, well, the New York Times hasn't been doing anything like this. And David Carr just kind of rips him apart.
Actually, this Michael Kinsley review has the quotation here.
Yes,
he says, before you ever went there, we had reporters there reporting genocide after genocide. So just because you put on a fucking safari helmet and look at some poop, that doesn't give you the right to insult what we do. End quote. So he does that stuff frequently in the movie. So it's worth watching just because David Carr is such a fascinating person. So anyway, page 1, Inside the New York Times is out in limited release in New York, I believe.
I saw this at the new Lincoln Center Theater, and it is gorgeous. If you are around New York or you're visiting, I was at the 5th ever screening at this theater. It's just sort of amazing. They have this waiting room that is basically a giant, either it's a projection screen or a giant TV, and it has it's an auditorium of its own right, but it's just where you sit.
It's a plasma screen.
Yeah, it's like an 80-inch plasma screen.
It's like the biggest. Yeah, it's like one of the biggest in the world.
But you just sit there while you're waiting for the movies in this gorgeous screen and gorgeous room that looks better than most other movie theaters. So it's very expensive looking, and the screening rooms are very nice. It's just a really lush experience.
Awesome. Well, you'll have to show me next time I'm in New York, Devindra.
Yeah.
All right, Adam Quigley, what have you been watching this week?
I have a few things I wanted to discuss. For the first time ever, I saw Highlander.
The classic. The classic.
What's that?
I was going to say the classic film directed by Russell Mulcahy or Cahy and starring Christopher Lambert.
Yes.
Yeah, is it pronounced Lambert or Lambert?
Whatever.
I think it's Lambert.
Yeah.
I've always said Lambert my whole life.
Yeah, so have I, but I think that's wrong.
Who knows?
Yeah.
But anyway, yes. So Highlander's it's a pretty bad movie. I don't understand why there's such an affection for this film. Especially, I mean, like I don't want to watch the sequel because apparently that's one of the worst movies ever made. But I can't imagine it actually being that much worse than this.
Yeah. Well, see, this is one of those movies, Adam, that I think is just, it was cool when it came out. And like when most of us were kind of young, seeing swords and seeing like crazy things happening. But yeah, it was never a good movie, and it has aged terribly.
Yeah, it has not aged well at all. And someone responded to me on Twitter. It was like, but it has like these epic sword fights, and it's like the sword fights in this movie are embarrassing. Like they're on par with like the fight scenes in the original Karate Kid. And the difference is in the original Karate Kid, it's supposed to be like inexperienced kids fighting, and this looks like these guys look like they have no idea what they're doing with these heavy pieces of metal. They're just kind of swinging them at each other, and then obviously you have these terrible like lightning effects and people spouting stuff off about like the quickening, and at no point do you really have like a good sense of this mythology or what's going on. And there's a cool element to the film, I think, I should say the potential for a cool element with that sort of parallel action between what's going on in the 1500s and the 80s, but at no point did I actually think they executed it well, because when you have like the 1500 stuff, which is really the first half of the film, it keeps cutting back and forth in between the 80s where nothing is going on really, just to give you sort of exposition and set up this character. And it's just like there's so little momentum to what's going on, and there's so little like actual emotion behind any of the beats or the dramatic beats. And Sean Connery appears for like 10 minutes total screen time, I think.
As a Spaniard.
Yeah, he's a Spaniard.
He's an Egyptian Spaniard.
He's Egyptian. And no matter what, it's still him talking like Sean Connery. Like he actually, I think at one point he says he's Irish, doesn't he? I think he says like he's Irish, that he like reveals that he's Egyptian, but he's a Spaniard. It's like, what is this?
And he has a sword.
And he has a sword. And then he trains him in a terrible training montage. It's movie's all sorts of bad. The one thing I'll actually say to its benefit is that some aspects of it are so bad that it actually is kind of fun to watch regardless. I love the fact that it has a score by Queen. So inappropriate. I love Queen.
Yes.
I think they've done some. So I mean, I love their music on its own, and I love their score for Flash Gordon, or I love the Flash Gordon theme, I should say. But it's like this. There's never a point where the Queen score actually fits with like what's going on screen in this movie, and it's kind of terrible and also kind of amazing at the same time. So yeah, Highlander. It's on Netflix Watch instantly, I believe. So if you
it's also a movie that's like endured over the years. Like not only did it spawn a sequel, but it spawned an entire television series.
Yeah.
It spawned an animated series.
Yeah.
And an animated series, which I like the animated series growing up, and the TV series is actually not terrible. So
how did they do an animated children's series about
it
men
is?
cutting
It's like
each
in the
other's heads
future.
off?
It's like in the future, and I forget if heads are actually cut off.
There's also, I'm looking at the Wikipedia here, an animated internet flash series called The Mythos Chronicles, a reunion special, audio plays, and this not including, of course, the it looked like direct-to-DVD films, Highlander Endgame and Highlander The Source, which was actually...
Highlander Endgame was in theaters.
Yeah, oh, wow.
I saw that movie in the theater.
Oh, my God.
This is what I don't understand about the Highlander franchise. Have any of these movies been successful? Because the first movie was not. I'm like looking it up right now. It made less than $6 million at the box office. Second one made a little over $15 million. Third one made $12 million. Fourth one made also $12 million.
Did the first one make money on home video? That would be. I'm assuming
it had to. I'm asking you guys. You're the ones that were.
Yeah, we're the experts.
You're the old people.
I mean, like you guys, like were around. And I don't know how this film actually generated success, but.
I actually saw Highlander 2: The Quickening in theaters. It was one of my first rated R films that I saw in theaters.
The Wikipedia page, which I'm sure could not be any less accurate, if at all possible, says the film was a video hit in the United States.
Yeah, which actually makes a lot of sense. So.
Right.
But I mean, I imagine there is some. It appeals as much to women as it does to men. You know, the idea of it's kind of like a trashy romance novel.
It's a universal story.
Yeah. Exactly.
There could be only one.
It crosses all boundaries.
Exactly. Yeah. So, Adam, you watched this movie and you could not explain why it has endured, I assume, yes?
Yeah, basically. Okay. Although I do love that line. There can be only one.
Yeah,
I mean,
there you go, and that's why it's endured. It's
that's the entire
I feel like that's the only thing that should endure is that line. Yeah, just repeat that endlessly.
That's why there has been a TV series and so many direct-to-video sequels and whatnot. Is because you could just say that line and.
Ironically, the one thing that makes it special is the one thing that they keep forgetting because they keep making more and more of them.
Yes,
there can be only one eventually.
Well, it's like the Final Destination movies. It's like they completely is undercut by the title of the movie itself.
Yeah, and now it's being remade, actually, I believe.
Yeah, Justin Lin apparently has remake rights or something along those lines.
I think stuff has changed since then.
Yeah,
but that's what was being discussed at one point.
This is why I was saying a remake of Highlander would actually be kind of cool with like modern choreography. And better attention to detail. I think it could. That's such a great concept.
What was the whole concept again, Adam? Was it like you have to cut their head? They're immortal unless you cut their heads off, right?
That's the only way to kill them.
The neck is the weak point for these immortal creatures.
I never really understood. Like they never really explained that properly because it's like, oh, you can't die, you're immortal, except you can actually get your head cut off, and they never really like go into that. He never actually says, oh, you can get your head cut off. He just says you're immortal.
Well, what possible explanation would be satisfactory after you know that premise? You know what I mean? Like, there's nothing. Like, the neck is the weak point, but like, if you cut off you can cut off other body parts. You know, like, do they grow back?
I think you just lose the body part.
A lot of questions. My point being, so was it a thing where if they killed an immortal, like everyone would become mortal? Like, wasn't there something?
They get their power too.
They're fighting. It's been a few years since I've seen it, but they're fighting for. Is it called the prize?
Yeah, it's the prize. It's called the prize.
They're fighting for a vague, unknown thing called the prize. They don't even know what it is, really, as I recall. But that if they, they're drawn to fight one another, and then when they kill someone, they absorb his powers, and then they're all supposed to be fighting until there's one left, because there can be only one, and then the one that is left will get the prize, whatever that is. And I guess I don't want to spoil what the prize is, but it's not too awesome. Yeah. Let's just say if you spent an eternity fighting lots of other dudes and literally risking your neck for hundreds of, if not thousands of years, this is not what you would want at the end of it.
Well, there is the Queen song that has the lyrics, "Do you want to live forever?" So really the prize actually in its own way is pretty special.
So it's basically the same plot as Jet Li's The One, right? Where you absorb the powers, right? Is that right? Am I getting this correct?
Yeah, I guess sort of, yeah.
Which is, by the way, is another classic that has spawned lots of properties after it. So they have
Except instead of having multiple Christopher Lamberts, who, by the way, is terrible in this movie. He's so bad.
He's pretty much bad in everything, so,
I don't think I've seen him in that much, but watching him in Highlander, I don't know why this guy ever found success. Because he honestly, I felt like I was watching Tommy Wiseau the entire time he spoke.
It is all the voice that makes him cool.
I just remember when I was a kid, Christopher Lambert was in like a lot of movies, and in a lot of those movies that I was watching, he would be like having sex with women, basically, in those movies. And I remember thinking, like, oh, I guess like in American society, like, this guy is like really attractive. Like that was
his star text, was that he was flamboyantly heterosexual.
That is how I was socialized into American society, because I was very little when all these movies came out. So anyway.
What I was trying to say, though, is that the villain of the film is actually the guy that voices Mr. Krabs on SpongeBob.
And
fun fact.
Yes.
All right. So, Adam, what else have you been watching this week?
I also finally got around to seeing Black Christmas, the original, not the remake, the 70s horror film, directed by, very bizarrely, Bob Clark, who has like the weirdest filmography. This is the guy that did Porky's, A Christmas Story, and then both of the Baby Geniuses movies.
Wow.
So I'm not really sure what that's about, but I actually really, really like Black Christmas. It's also on Netflix Watch Instantly, by the way, so if you haven't seen it, I totally recommend it. And I think it's also a little bizarre to see how this film, which is really correct me if I'm wrong, sort of a precursor to like a lot of the slasher films of this genre, specifically like slasher films that have like girls getting picked off one by one. So it's kind of weird to see what this sort of slasher film has spawned, because this slasher film actually has like a lot on its mind. It's actually not a stupid horror film, and it really is. It's not like exploiting these women. I don't think there's like a nude scene or anything in the film. It really actually is about sort of like the victimization like of women going up against like sort of the depravity of men. The killer of the film is this sort of mysterious figure named Billy, who is portrayed exclusively through first-person point of view camera shots, and you just sort of hear him sort of like huffing and puffing, and it's really creepy. And phone calls, and where he says stuff like he's like, "I want to lick your cunt," and it's like, oh man, it's pretty sadistic. And
are you saying that's not a good pickup line?
I mean, I haven't had much luck with it personally. Maybe you've experienced different, David, but
no, I haven't. That's what I'm saying. You're confirming it.
I guess so. But yeah, it's a very strange horror film. But I definitely think this, unlike Highlander, has endured over time. And it kind of just shows you a lot of the horror films back then actually are a lot more interesting than sort of the more generic slashers now. So yeah, definitely worth seeing, especially if you want to see sort of a horror film with a more sort of feminist take. Yeah, definitely unlike a lot of horror films I've seen.
All right, well, the movie's Black Christmas. It's available on Netflix Watch instantly, and according to Adam Quigley, you should check it out. Let's move on, guys, into film news this week. A couple film news items that are really worth discussing, and actually one old news item that we never actually got to, but I think I have a couple things to say about. So let's begin by discussing Best Picture nominees. A few years ago, actually, what was it?
2 years ago.
2 years ago, right. The Academy announced that they would be expanding the field of Best Picture nominees from 5 nominees to 10 nominees. But this week, according to Academy Executive Director Bruce Davis, quote, "In studying the data, what stood out was that Academy members had regularly shown a strong admiration for more than 5 movies, but a Best Picture nomination should be an indication of extraordinary merit. If there are only 8 pictures that truly earn that honor in a given year, we shouldn't feel an obligation to round out the number." So basically what they're doing is they're saying that it's no longer going to be exactly 10 necessarily. It'll be somewhere between 5 and 10 Best Picture nominations. So people, members of the Academy, had a lot to say about this. The Hollywood Reporter put together an article written by Tim Appello called "Why Oscars' 10 Best Picture Nominees Experiment Failed and What Happens Now." And they have some really good quotes from Academy members that I think are pretty revealing. According to one Academy member, "It's probably a smart move. 10 was stupid in the first place. I talked to 60 people. 5 of them had 10 Best Picture picks. Let's face it, they just don't make movies like they used to." But nobody wanted to object because the goals were obviously noble. It wasn't just that Warner made them feel bad after The Dark Knight got snubbed in 2009. And then another source said, "How in the fuck could they have had a unanimous vote with 1 abstention and yet reverse themselves so completely 2 years later? They were supposed to leave it for 3 years." So it is kind of like they were like, let's do this, and then now they're reversing themselves. And there is some consternation about that. For those who don't know, like, the history of this, a lot of people surmise that the 10 Best Picture nominations was kind of a way for the Academy to be able to recognize films like The Dark Knight, which obviously was very popular among mainstream America, but didn't really get any love from Academy members. That movie did not get nominated, so it was thought that by nominating 10 films, they would be able to rope in movies like The Dark Knight in subsequent years, but that didn't really happen. Here, one more quote. "Making it 10 didn't get you Avatars and Batmans, it got you Winter's Bone and The Kids Are All Right." So it kind of favored indie films more than it favored big blockbusters, in other words. Anyway, a lot of implications as a result of this, and sort of political implications as well, at least in terms of the Academy. Matt Singer, you joined us for our Academy Award discussion. What are your thoughts on this switching from 10 to 5 to 10?
Well, I love the article you sent that you just read the quotes from, because I felt like there's a lot of hedging in that article that you didn't even mention, where everything that is meant is is predicted is that they also predict that the opposite could happen. I pulled out this quote here. The new rules may make campaigning more frantic and competition more bitter and entertaining. Or it could become more boring with fewer outlier wildcards. So one of two things will happen. Either it'll be really exciting or it will be really not exciting. And we have no idea what's going to happen.
Yeah.
And so I'm very curious to see how this will shake out, as I think many people are, because it's not entirely clear how it will shake out. It is strange that they want diversity amongst like the mainstream, that they're trying so hard to get a more variety amongst the most widely seen movies out there, and presumably a lot of the movies that, you know, like, to me it's like one of the other reasons that they said they wanted to expand the field was to get more films out there that have that, you know, Academy Award nominated tag, so that they might get a little more box office, you know, that it might encourage people to see these movies. How many more people needed to see The Dark Knight? It was like the second highest grossing movie of all time. Did it really need the Academy Award nominated tag on it? Were there people out there that were waiting?
Right. It's kind of like they started handing out these, you know, Academy Award nominations, and then they were kind of like, whoa, I think we're handing these out a little bit too frequently. You know, they're like, this is clearly...
It's a double-edged sword, too,
yeah.
because they're like, well, we're going to, you know, if people go to see these movies because they're nominated for Oscars, so we want to have more of them, but when you have more of them, you dilute the brand of it.
Yep.
So it makes it less, you know, and then you have movies that are maybe less deserving. I do think it's interesting that all those quotes in that article too say how the system was favoring independents over mainstream films. I'm not really sure that that's necessarily true, though. I mean, if you look, they only had 2 years, so it's a very small sample. And then, like last year, there were 5 mainstream movies and 5 independent movies, and most of the independent movies were made by large studios anyway. The 5 mainstream movies were The Fighter, Inception, The Social Network, Toy Story 3, and True Grit. And someone in that article complains about The Town didn't get nominated for Best Picture, and that Winter's Bone did. Well, maybe Winter's Bone was just a really good movie, and it deserved a nomination. And maybe it would have gotten one anyway, right?
Yeah.
I mean, it seems there's a lot of ganging up on movies that whoever the anonymous Academy person here in this article was. I get the feeling that we're not a fan of Winter's Bone, because there's a lot of like Winter's Bone bashing in that article.
Also,
I didn't go back to the year before, but I bet if we look at it, we could find a bunch of. I mean, the quote you read, Dave, said like, you know, it didn't get us Avatars and Batmans, it got us Winter's Bone and The Kids Are All Right. Avatar was nominated for Best Picture.
Yeah, I'm saying, I think what they were trying to say is it didn't get you more avatars.
How many avatars do we need nominated for Best Picture?
Also, the idea that this quote is like talking about how Winter's Bone beat out The Town. I mean, The Town, we enjoyed The Town, but it is at best a serviceable bank robbery action thriller. It is not. I would not consider it Best Picture material by any stretch of the imagination. And if Winter's Bone and Kids Are All Right get to slap a Best Picture nomination on their posters, like, why is that a bad thing? I don't necessarily think it's a bad thing, but I do agree they got to walk that fine line. I think that this is a decent way to do it. Devindra, were you going to say something?
No.
Okay, it sounded like you're going to say it. So yeah, this is a good way to do it. Is that just varying it between 5 and 10? It is kind of, I think, embarrassing for them to some degree that they're like, yeah, we're going to do 10, and then now they're like, okay, maybe there's not actually 10 good movies per year.
Yeah. But really, it's only industry people that care, right?
Yeah.
So.
Well, and people making movies, but so look forward to that change. There's also like other changes in terms of voting rules for animation and other controversial things like that. We'll have to save those for another day. Let's move on, guys. Comic-Con. This is an interesting article in the New York Times called "Movie Studios Reassess Comic-Con." And let's see if I can read a quote here from this article written by Brooke Barnes and Michael Siepley. Comic-Con, as a growing number of movie marketers are realizing, has turned into a treacherous place. Studios come seeking buzz, but the Comic-Con effect can be more negative than positive. The swarm of actually, let me pause here. For those of you who don't know what Comic-Con is, it takes place in San Diego every year in the month of July.
If you don't know what Comic-Con is,
yeah, why are you listening to the Slash Filmcast? But it's about 120,000 people converge on the San Diego Convention Center, and movie studios and comic book companies and TV studios, they all bring their wares, and it's been lavish presentations going on at Comic-Con. I remember we'll get to this in a few moments, but let me finish reading this quote. The swarm of dedicated fans, many of whom arrive at the convention in Japanese anime drag or draped in Ewok fur, can instantly sour on a film if it doesn't like what it sees, leaving publicity teams with months of damaging web chatter to clean up. According to Michael Moses, co-president of marketing for Universal Pictures, it's a red-letter opportunity, but you shouldn't go simply because it sits there on the calendar. You have to be absolutely certain you have goods ready that can really make a difference for your film. And essentially what this article is saying is that movie studios in the past have spent crap tons of money to present material at Comic-Con. We've all been to Comic-Con here on the Slash Filmcast. We've been to Hall H, which is the biggest hall, which can hold thousands of people. And they'll trot out their stars on stage. They'll get James Cameron on stage, and James Cameron will show 20 minutes of Avatar and get everyone riled up, and it's supposed to spread word of mouth. And it's once you convince the geeks, the social media mavens, they will spread word to their friends, and, the marketing is done for us. That's kind of the theory behind Comic-Con for all these years. It really started, the main craze, I believe, really started around Lord of the Rings time, when that movie presented at Comic-Con, it did massively well. And then they're like, okay, we got to do this every year. And then now it's out of control.
It really ended with Scott Pilgrim.
Well, that's a good point, because
or Sucker Punch too. Scott Pilgrim was a lot of money.
My whole thing is when I see movie studios reassess Comic-Con, my thing is wow, it is about time, because from a business perspective, doing the cost benefit analysis, return on investment calculation here, I gotta wonder. I remember we did the Tron Legacy scavenger hunt, and then when we got to the end, it was a recreation of Flynn's arcade, right? You remember that? It was so awesome. They had all these old arcade games.
And then they
did
that again last year, just for fun.
Yeah, they did it again last year, and it's that must have cost thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars.
An absurd amount of money, which they probably had very little return on investment on.
And it's for what? For what? What are they doing this? To convince people like us. And of course, we talked about it in glowing terms, but the movie ended up kind of sucking, Tron Legacy, and if your movie ends up kind of sucking, it doesn't matter how good your marketing is most of the time. And B, as we saw with the Green Lantern this week, B, are you really reaching the most people possible by spending this money on reconverting this arcade? It is a good question.
You're also preaching to the converted in a lot of cases too. The folks who were being blown away by that Tron arcade, probably most of them were going to see it anyway, right?
Right.
If they didn't care about Tron Legacy, they wouldn't have gone to the arcade to begin with.
So I'm really torn on the subject, because on the one hand, it's we love stuff like that. That's so cool to go to Comic-Con and see stuff like that. But on the other hand, when I'm going, the entire time in the back of my mind, I'm thinking to myself, my God, these people are squandering. These people are basically flushing this money down the toilet.
You didn't see the Scott Pilgrim madness last year, Dave. I think your head would have exploded. Seeing Edgar Wright just, walk 2,000 people down the street to this theater that they had rented out, and they basically had that theater for the entire week, I guess, or for several days for screenings. That's the biggest event, and then the Metric concert at the end. We all gushed about that, but Scott Pilgrim didn't do very well in the theaters. So.
In addition to that, they also had this huge display which people could walk through and get shirts and stuff. Yeah, they spent a ton on Scott Pilgrim, and I always wonder they probably could have gotten the exact same sort of response from audiences and generated the same buzz by spending almost nothing and just premiering a few clips or a trailer or something. I mean, that's basically what Jon Favreau has done, and it's worked pretty well for him.
Yeah, and especially for that movie where I think we've talked about maybe why that movie failed. If they had a little more money, I think to maybe reposition the marketing for that movie, or at least think about a better way to sell it to general audiences.
Right.
I think it could have done a bit better, and that money would have been better spent than the giant Comic-Con fucking extravaganza.
Comic-Con is the Groupon of the online media world, where in both situations you're spending massive amounts of money for questionable return.
That's how I feel the same way about set visits. Like, I don't know what studios feel they're gaining from like sending out people to do these things, but they just like spend money everywhere. They just like put you up in really nice hotels. You have like ridiculous per diems. I don't know what. I really think studios need to reassess like where they're putting their money.
Basically, we are here on the Filmcast. We are trying to bite the hand that feeds us. That's what is going on.
It's like, as much as I feel like I personally benefit from like set visits, I just don't think they're gaining anything from it because no one gives a shit. No one like reads those reports.
I think in terms, I've never been on a set visit, so I can't speak to that. But I mean, the expenditures at Comic-Con clearly have gotten out of hand.
Yeah.
Like the amount of money, just like you're saying, the amount of money that they're spending versus the tangible increase in visibility of these properties certainly doesn't equal. But I think you can understand why Comic-Con got so big because it's like it's a brilliant publicity machine because everyone is there, all the websites are there, and now all the news crews, all the entertainment, the entire, film journalism world is there now, and no one has seen any of the movies. So there's obviously now when people sit in Hall H and they see something and they criticize it, I guess you can get negative feedback that way. But most of the people who are there have not seen any of these movies. So, it's a lot easier to avoid negative criticism. So I understand why it became such a hotbed. But I think I'm also not surprised that now they're like, maybe we should rein it in just a little bit.
Yeah. I mean, one potentially good thing from this is that maybe we'll see less titles that seem to have no place at Comic-Con getting promoted too. At least that's what I'm hoping. Like it was a couple of years ago, but they had that, the new Patricia Heaton sitcom, The Middle, was at Comic-Con for some reason. And I feel like for TV, they tend to screw things up a lot.
I don't think. I think if anything, it's going to be the opposite of what you're describing. Dude.
Yeah,
according to this article,
that's not like hard to sort of promote at Comic-Con is to just have like a panel for your TV show.
Yeah,
that doesn't cost that much. Whereas what studios have been doing with all these big blockbusters is costing them a fortune.
And according to this article in the New York Times, it's like the lack of huge blockbuster films will make room for more TV shows to be there. So
yeah, I did read that. It's just I'm hoping it doesn't work out that way. That's all.
So get ready for the new adventures of old Christine here at Comic-Con.
But basically, yeah, all they're going to do here is they're going to basically try to optimize the amount of money that they spend. And I think for a lot of studios, that means let's just not even go at all. And ultimately, right, what we see is that whether a movie does well or not is dependent on so many other things other than how it does at Comic-Con, right? Like, to me, it's virtually irrelevant how a movie does at Comic-Con in the sense that, like, in relation to how it ends up doing in the theaters and in box office. But you look at all these movies like Scott Pilgrim vs. the World and Tron Legacy and Avatar and, Twilight and The Expendables. Like, really, those movies performed well at Comic-Con. I think all of them did. But they all ended up like with vastly different outcomes. And so it's like so many different things inform whether the public will actually see this movie, including the non-Comic-Con marketing campaign.
But I mean, in some ways that's an unfair comparison. Like Avatar had a lot more visibility before Comic-Con than some of those other things you mentioned. You know what I mean?
I don't even know if that's true, to be honest.
Really?
With you. Yeah, it was like I remember there being very little information about Avatar before Comic-Con.
Yeah, same here.
So
that was really our first look at the film.
Yeah.
Period.
So anyway. My thinking is like I guess on a general like visceral human level, I am glad when people are wasting less money. So I'm glad at this change, but it does suck for us geeks that we're not going to see huge wastes of money and people like basically trying to cater to our every whim, which is what they do at these things. So yeah, we should be disappointed that this is happening, but I think we're all kind of. The waste is so staggering, we can't help but be somewhat relieved. So yeah, that's what's going on with Comic-Con. Finally, I wanted to talk briefly about The Hangover 2, which is probably the only other time I'll ever discuss this film. What's really amusing to me, this story is just hilarious. Like, on a conceptual level, I find this endlessly amusing. And that is the fact that S. Victor Whitmill, the man who designed Mike Tyson's famous face tattoo, is suing Warner Brothers because they reproduced that tattoo on Ed Helms' face in The Hangover Part 2. Right? And for those who haven't seen The Hangover Part 2, here's the premise of the movie is Ed Helms wakes up after his second hangover and he finds Mike Tyson's tattoo on his face, and it's like freaking him out, you know? So apparently the people who came up with that joke didn't understand that he would what do you call it? Like that Whitmill owned the rights to that tattoo. And let me actually. I was listening to NPR's On the Media, which is an excellent radio program, and they invited James Boyle, professor of law at Duke University, to discuss this issue. And I have a clip from his discussion. I'll just play it. I thought it was a little educational here.
Copyright is supposed to cover any kind of pictorial, graphic, written, musical expression that's original and that's fixed in material form. So the argument is, well, if you put it on canvas, it would be copyrightable. If you put it on paper, it would be copyrightable. Why isn't it copyrightable when you put it on human skin? The more disturbing question is, first, whether or not we want copyright law to cover portions of the human body. Is that actually what we mean by a tangible medium of expression? Is that what Congress would have wanted? Is that what we want? Secondly, if we do, what kind of control does that give the person who creates the tattoo? Are they going to be able to tell me not to be filmed, not to have someone take a picture of me? After all, those would be copies of the copy. Can you imagine someone telling you that you actually can't show your face in front of any recording device? It's those kinds of dystopian musings that have a number of people disturbed.
So I thought that was interesting. A lot of people also brought up, oh, well, it's clearly a satirical use of that. You know, it's like fair use reference to that tattoo. And actually, Professor Boyle had this to say about that topic.
The difficulty is, what's actually happening here? Is this a criticism of Mike Tyson or of Mike Tyson's tattoo? Or is he using this tattoo in order to make a completely different point about the very dumb things that people do when they're drunk? If the court thought it was the latter, then they might be less inclined to think that it was a fair use, even though it's clearly transformative. They put it in a new context, they've changed it. If, on the other hand, they were taking aim at the original or mocking it, then the courts are generally more hospitable, and there's a sort of gray line in between. Someone tried to take Dr. Seuss's poem, One Fish, Two Fish, and turn it into a poem about the O.J. Simpson trial. Instead of one fish, two fish, it went one knife, two wife, red knife, dead wife. The court, when presented with the fair use argument there, said, no, you're not commenting on Dr. Seuss. You're using Dr. Seuss to comment on O.J. Simpson. Is that the way the court would see it in this case? Or would they say, no, actually, he is kind of making fun of this practice of tattooing your face, and for that purpose, he actually needed Mike Tyson's tattoo?
So it's very ambiguous, like, at this point, what the ruling is going to be. Whitmill originally tried to prevent The Hangover Part 2 from being released at all, which would have been financially very costly for the studio because so much marketing goes into, like, the opening date, and if they had to change it, it would be a pretty big disaster for them. But, this court said too many people would have been negatively financially impacted by that, so they let it come out. But they're exploring some different options. Warner Brothers may pay S. Victor Whitmill, or another option is they may digitally remove the tattoo from Ed Helms' face for the DVD release of The Hangover. In my mind, like, that would be a pretty, let's say, I'd be very interested in how they would pull that off because the tattoo is obviously referenced numerous times during the film in various ways. So I don't really see there being a plausible outcome where they'd be able to seamlessly remove the tattoo. Maybe they could replace it with a similar tattoo or one that was equally outrageous, but it just seems like it would be millions and millions and millions of dollars. And the reason why I find this so endlessly fascinating is because we've talked on the /Filmcast about how The Hangover 2 is in many ways lazy because they basically replicated not only the plot of the first film, but many of the story beats from the first film, and it got them in trouble. Like, that laziness got them in trouble, like, legally and financially, because if they had just thought up of a different joke other than A, Ed Helms has something done to his face, and B, it's Mike Tyson's tattoo, if they had just done something different, they wouldn't be facing, potentially millions of dollars for the damages. But because they couldn't think of anything new to do for the sequel, they're facing a lot of issues. So that's kind of,
especially the fact that it's just like this movie might forever be changed. This huge hit might forever be changed over a legal issue, even though people have seen the original version of the film.
Right.
But I bet George Lucas is on board with it.
It's just so dumb. Like, it's just so dumb. Like, the whole thing is so dumb. You guys are dumb. And by you guys, I'm talking about, I guess, Warner Brothers and the creators of this film. That, like, you reuse the same joke from the first film, and it got you burned. Basically, that's what happened. And it's like, I have no sympathy whatsoever. Because, like, you tried to shovel something derivative out there, and then it got you in trouble, and it's like, good. Like, the system finally works for once. That's my attitude towards it. Anyone else have any other thoughts on the situation?
I think you put more thought into this than the studio did.
It is pretty funny that they didn't consider the fact that they might not have, that this could be a copyright issue, that no one thought, or maybe they did think and thought they were fine, but that apparently they hadn't squared it away, that this tattoo, which they hinged that is on his face for basically the entire movie.
Yeah, and without giving anything away,
do we own the rights to that? Is there a rights issue here? Should we be concerned about? It's fine. It's whatever.
Well, without giving anything away, there's like a late plot development that also kind of that the tattoo is like strongly related to.
Yeah.
So it would make it pretty weird if they had to digitally remove it.
I think if they digitally have to change it, they should just change it to the words Mike Tyson's face tattoo.
I think that would be preferable. But yeah, it's actually, if you look into like the copyright / trademark issues around it, it's actually kind of fascinating. Like, apparently the original like copyright or patent or whatever it was like this tattoo on a 3D object, and like the 3D object is Mike Tyson's face. So it's like, can you actually copyright that? It's actually quite interesting. So,
I'm just curious, like, how it's actually going to be cheaper for them to digitally remove every single frame of that tattoo,
right? Then
into something else than it would be just to fucking
pay the guy
them
off. Yeah, maybe his demands are like too high, or maybe he wants to like go to trial or something. Who knows? So the Hangover DVD comes out, I think, in December of 2011. By then, we'll know what happens with this case.
Maybe he doesn't want the movie to exist.
Yeah, this is the one guy that has the power to single-handedly, like take
Mike Tyson, your only hope.
Exactly. All right. Well, guys, that's going to bring us to the end of our film news segment. It's going to bring us to our review of Green Lantern.
No. Sorry, I gotta run. Make yourself at home, okay? There's water in the tap.
Hal, you're late. This test today, it's important.
I'm gonna make you look good up there, don't worry. Now let's get these pants off and fly some planes. When I'm flying, it feels like anything is possible. It's like no matter how bad things get, there's something good out there, just over the horizon.
That was from the trailer for Green Lantern. It was out this past weekend, starring Ryan Reynolds and Blake Lively. It was directed by Martin Campbell, the same director of such classics as Casino Royale, GoldenEye, and Vertical Limit. This is the Slash Filmcast, the official podcast of SlashFilm.com. Now, Matt Singer. Green Lantern did not do that well this weekend, both critically and at the box office. On Rotten Tomatoes, it got 25%, which is actually lower than the 45% Mr. Popper's Penguins got, which is actually pretty shocking if you think about it. And it underperformed. I believe it made less money than X-Men, which doesn't sound like that big of an achievement, but like X-Men was actually also considered somewhat of a disappointment and didn't have as much money behind the marketing as Green Lantern did. So financially and critically, it's somewhat of a disappointment. I'm going to read to you from the first paragraph of Dustin Rawls' review of Green Lantern. Dustin is the owner and writer for Pagiba.com, Pagiba.com. One of my favorite sites. The the tagline for the site is "scathing reviews from bitchy people," I think, or something along those lines. Here is from Dustin Rawls' review of Green Lantern. Ryan Reynolds once suggested that his Green Lantern movie would be somewhere in between Christopher Nolan's Batman films and Christopher Reeve's Superman movies. And he even had the audacity to draw comparisons to the original Star Wars. A more apt comparison is a movie somewhere between Fantastic Four and the sticky floor of a strip club the morning after St. Patrick's Day. The Green Lantern is a pus-filled bed sore of a film. A wacky, incoherent mess of Ryan Reynolds' forehead, Blake Lively's legs, and cheap CGI creatures straight out of a Sid and Marty Krofft television show. Matt Singer, is Green Lantern really that horrible?
No, it's not that horrible, because that's really being extreme, but it's not very good either. Which is disappointing to me, because I love Green Lantern. I'm a big comic book fan, and Green Lantern has always been one of my favorite characters. So I take no pleasure in saying that the movie was a disappointment. I haven't been like waiting for this movie to be bad and waiting to tear it apart. That hasn't been my attitude towards this movie. I've been hoping it would be good. I did like some of the effects. I liked all the stuff with Ryan Reynolds as the Green Lantern when he actually gets to do stuff, creating things with his ring, and the creativity, the visual creativity of some of that stuff. And him hanging out on Oa, the alien, the home world of the Green Lanterns with all the different aliens. All that stuff I thought was actually pretty good. I thought it looked really cool. I thought his costume and all of that looked pretty good. But really, everything else about the movie I found to be really messy and kind of bad. Really bad.
We'll dive into that more later. But
Yeah.
Devindra Hardwar, your brief thoughts on Green Lantern?
Yeah, I think middle of the road just kind of describes this film pretty well. It's not absolutely terrible, but it doesn't really reach too many high points that makes it very memorable. But yeah, it is funny that it's getting so, ripped apart by critics, because I don't really think it deserves that. This is an averagely made film. It has a lot of problems. I don't think Blake Lively fits in here at all. The script is not very good, but there's some really good elements. Like Ryan Reynolds is somewhat interesting here, and Peter Sarsgaard and Mark Strong also deliver really good performances, much better performances than this movie deserves. But I guess it's kind of interesting if you consider that Thor was, I think, more well-beloved. I'm looking at the Rotten Tomatoes. It's like at 80-something now. And I honestly think that film was a little overpraised, and I think this one's being a little, overly criticized. So there's
that's actually exactly where I'm coming from as well.
Yeah.
And I kind of wonder, actually, if you replace the release dates on the two of those films, how different the critical reaction would have been. Because Thor was really like one of the first blockbusters of 2011.
Mm-hmm.
So there were sort of people were sort of not yet accustomed to watching a lot of superhero movies one after another.
Yeah,
and then you had Thor, X-Men First Class. You also had like Super 8, and sort of we had already sort of gotten used to the rhythm of things for the summer. And then you have Green Lantern, and it just kind of falls flat, and suddenly everyone hates it. Yeah. I feel like people would have been a lot more even-handed. I'm not saying it would have had a positive rating on Rotten Tomatoes, but I don't think it would have had a 25%.
There's some weird reaction going on, and this does bring up something that we talked about last year. Like we saw that this year was going to be crazy with the comic book movies, and mainstream audiences, it's unclear if it's really going to survive. Like we got Captain America coming up. Cowboys and Aliens is technically a comic book movie, but I guess people won't recognize it as such. But, I don't know. I'm worried about what's going to happen to Captain America. But go ahead, Dave.
Well, Adam, why don't you go first, and then I'll chime in with my thoughts.
Yeah, I mean, just so I'm clear, I did actually like the movie. I definitely think overall it's a failure. I liked aspects of it. I think technically, like if you're referring just to sort of the polish of films, I definitely think it looks more polished than like X-Men First Class. I think it's competent in a lot of ways, but like that's kind of the extent of my praise. I really actually dug a lot of the action. But that's also, I feel like the thing that cinematically had the most potential to sort of play with, and I still think it's kind of underwhelming in terms of like they didn't really fulfill the potential in that regard either. But yeah, you have this power, this ring that, depending on sort of your own strength and willpower, gives you the ability to render anything that your mind thinks of. And it's kind of interesting how they play with that within the film in terms of the fact that this character is actually kind of limited in his imagination. So he always comes up with stuff that sort of relates to his personality, which I thought was interesting, although I still was kind of hoping later it would show him sort of growing and actually becoming smarter, which we don't see as much. But yeah, I don't know. I feel like the film has good elements. Overall, it's kind of dramatically inert. The things that actually matter most, sort of the character arcs, just feel really, really forced, like even more forced than most comic book movies. And as an origin story, it lacks that sense of like awe or joy that you are hoping to get from something that's a gigantic fucking space opera. I don't know. It didn't deliver.
Yeah, but you know what? At least this movie had like a sense of scope that Thor, I think, was lacking. Like there are like the planet, like Oa, feels alive. It feels like more than just a CG cutscene, and then the action taking place. Like there's a scene in this movie, right, where a crowd of people are running away from something. Like it's a city block. It's like a whole street, and there are tons of people. In Thor, there is like a tiny street, and there may be 5 people running away. It's kind of like that's the sort of thing that really kept me away from Thor in terms of believing it. Here you feel like things are at stake, like more than a handful of people could get hurt if something bad happened.
That being said, I actually, I do think it would be interesting to switch the release dates, but and I also agree, like, this movie is being unfairly punished. I felt so bad for Martin Campbell and Ryan Reynolds. Like, looking at the reaction to this, it's like I thought it was going to be a war crime what I saw on screen, but it was, totally
tolerable.
Yeah, totally tolerable as a film. Totally barely adequate, one could say. And so I was shocked at how vicious the critics were this time around as well. But
although what Devindra's saying about the scope, I actually heartily disagree with. And I feel like Green Lantern establishes a scope and then does very little with it, which ultimately makes it even more disappointing. Because you have all these alien characters,
right,
and they totally put sort of the marketing behind a lot of those characters. You look at like all the posters, they have individual character posters for these aliens that probably have a combined total of like 15 minutes screen time. And they just do very little. There was no like relationships really between Ryan Reynolds' character and all these aliens. And I think that's what would have really differentiated the film from so many other superhero films that we're getting. Instead, they put the brunt of the story behind Ryan Reynolds' relationship with freaking Blake Lively. And that's like probably the worst thing in the movie.
Right. When I'm talking about scope, though, just so you know, I'm talking more about like the set pieces and the actual like how big this movie is aiming for. Like where this movie ends in the final scene, and we'll talk about this in spoilers. I think that was kind of cool. That looked cool. That is what I want to see in a superhero movie, not Thor struggling to pick up a hammer or Thor.
But that being said, I actually liked Thor a lot better, and I think this movie does make you appreciate all the good stuff that Thor does. The premise of Green Lantern is pretty silly, right? I mean, are we agreed that it's pretty silly? Like
most comic book movies, yeah.
No, I mean, but
it's a point, where they are.
It's silly in a way that like they should have realized ahead of time that giving speeches about like the power of will and the power of fear, like that's what it's being taken from. I really like. I actually kind of dig the Green Lantern mythology, but what works in a comic book doesn't necessarily translate to live action. And hearing them actually talk about it makes it seem so silly, which would be fine if you kind of took it from this sort of like, it's a kind of cheese ball, like sort of family oriented like kids film. Although I'm not saying like I wanted them to go that route, but I can totally see them working with the material if that's what they're going towards. But no, kids, like I don't imagine many kids would be able to make it all the way through this movie, considering how horrifying some parts of it are.
Yeah, that's true. That is exactly correct. But Adam, wait, what is the color of Will? That's my question. What's the color of Will? Are you familiar with the color of Will?
Duh.
Yeah, it's obviously green. Yeah. Okay. All right. No, but it's stuff like that that is just explained in straight exposition. I do like, like Martin Campbell's tackling like an inherently silly topic, and he's doing it straight, and it takes balls to do that. Like, I don't think people give it enough credit that like you expect the audience to buy that Will is colored green and fear is colored yellow, and you have this thing created out of fear, and it's like, okay, that's all pretty silly stuff. But you got to make your audience buy it in some way, and he tries his best. Another actually interesting counterpoint to this film, The Fifth Element. where they're fighting against, I think, a ball of evil, right? In that film,
so ambiguous evil,
ambiguous evil, and like, how did that movie deal with that? It dealt with it by being like way out there, out of control, silly. This movie, I don't think
that was the tone of that movie.
Exactly,
that fit in better there.
And this movie doesn't really ever really find like this movie is like much more serious in tone with all these daddy issues going on and these Cronenbergian, body transformation scenes, and it never really finds its footing in the realm of like this, really creepy. I'm sorry, in the realm of this really like fantastical world with this ridiculous premise.
Well, sorry, go ahead.
Nah, go
I
ahead.
think that's why people like Thor so much better than Green Lantern, is that I actually I agree with you guys in terms of the scope of the movie, that Green Lantern and the visuals of the movie I thought were better in Green Lantern for the most part than they are in Thor, and the action I thought was better in Green Lantern than the action was in Thor. But Thor had a really consistent tone, and you also had the hero who was so likable and charming that you kind of just enjoyed the vibe of that movie. You enjoyed the characters, and you enjoyed their sort of camaraderie. In this movie, the tone is, even though there are elements that are kind of it vacillates so wildly between elements that are like almost like Three Stooges movies, like when I don't think this is a spoiler at all. When the Ring, you see it in the trailer, when the Ring finds Hal Jordan, like it brings him to the dying alien and dumps him in a puddle. Like it can't just like leave him there. He has to like drop him headfirst into a puddle, like wah wah. And then there's other scenes, like you're saying, that are incredibly horrifying. And even though they have Ryan Reynolds, this very charismatic actor who likes to do he likes to sort of wink at whatever he's doing. That's sort of his persona. Most of the movie he spends kind of like if you had to sum up Hal Jordan as played by Ryan Reynolds in this movie with one word, you wouldn't even use a word. You'd just use like like a big sigh. Like he spends so much of the movie just kind of sighing and being mopey and depressed. Yeah. It's like
he sulks a lot. He doesn't want. He's like, I don't want this power.
The most powerful weapon in the universe. He's got a gorgeous girlfriend. He's got abs that you could grate cheese on. It's like, cheer up, buddy. Things aren't that bad. So
it's okay, guy.
He's like one of the theoretically one of the most skilled fighter pilots in the.
His job is a fighter pilot. Like he has the coolest job, the coolest girlfriend, the coolest. He's incredibly hunky. You would think that this guy was like living in his mother's basement, eating Cheetos all day long. Where's the joy? Thor had the joy, and I think a lot of Green Lantern, except when towards the end when he's kind of doing cool stuff, it doesn't have that joy.
Mm-hmm. Can we also talk?
That's what I'll say that to like Thor's benefit. Even though I think the ultimate character arc of Thor was very, very just sort of rudimentary, and it didn't feel earned when he actually converts in the end. And you have a similar issue here, but at least there was sort of I feel like Thor served as like an anchor to the dramatic center of that film, and that you actually bought sort of his through line as the film progressed up until that point. Whereas with Green Lantern, you never really can get a handle on like what this character is experiencing, because like when he actually fucking gets taken through space, he doesn't seem that bothered by it.
Yeah, exactly.
And then he gives up really quickly. Like it's not like this is all too overwhelming for him. He's just kind of like, I can't do this. It's just, I don't know, like you never really feel connected to this character.
I agree completely with everything you're saying, Adam. That a spot on description of Ryan Reynolds, who's kind of an enigma. Like, what is going through his mind? Other than that, he's kind of a. I was going to use a word that I guess is not politically correct, but kind of a wimp, let's say.
Well, he's supposed to be like this totally brave and fearless guy who somehow pussies out of everything. So.
And they explain that because they give a flashback while he's with the like he has daddy issues.
I love when you bring up the word daddy issues. Like it is the most sort of cliche daddy situation you could possibly think of. There were literally moments in this film where I knew what the line was going to be before it was actually said. Like I was going to say, I was going to speak the line out loud of like what is going to happen the next. It is so cliche of like, okay, Hal Jordan is a pilot. His father's a pilot. Hal Jordan has daddy issues. Whatever it is you're thinking of in your mind when you think of daddy issues, it is probably pretty close or better than what the film actually portrays. Can we talk about Blake Lively here for a moment? Blake Lively.
Before we move into Blake Lively, I want to point. I probably should have phrased that better. I just want to point out that like one of the funniest scenes that Martin Campbell has ever directed was in Vertical Limit. And it's not that far removed from one of the worst scenes in Green Lantern.
Okay, what scene are you referring to in Vertical? Or are you talking about the opening scene in the desert?
Yes, exactly. Yeah. The daddy, we actually played it before. It was the keyboard cat scene.
Yeah.
From Vertical Limit, and it's the opening scene. It's another daddy issue scene.
Yeah. No, that's exactly right. It is
so
very.
Campbell
similar.
should really like harness that melodrama a little better.
Yeah, it is very similar, that scene, because you know exactly how it's going to end too.
Yeah, there's no possible way it could end other than how it does.
Yeah. Anyway, Blake Lively, I think she certainly does a lot better than the trailer would indicate, but the actress that's present in this film is almost unrecognizable than the actress who gave like a very, in my opinion, lively performance in The Town. You know, I thought she was pretty fantastic in that film, even though she's playing a far less wholesome character. But then again, like, she's not given much to work with in this movie.
Yeah, I mean, you're pointing to really problems with the script, really, and that's the biggest failure in this movie. It doesn't start off very well. I think the first line in the movie is, "Are you afraid? Good," or something like that, and that's the villain that's seeing these things in front of it and taking their powers or whatever. But it's like it's just badly written at a point where there's so much to work with. You've got Ryan Reynolds, you know, a guy who can make pretty much anything like funny. You just kind of waste him in this role. And then Blake Lively, who is here just to look good, and that's a character that they're supposed to set up for another movie, which I don't think is ever going to happen now.
Yeah, I would find that unlikely.
Can I say something here about Blake Lively? I mean, I think for what she's given to do, she's fine. I think the larger problem is that this may be the worst cast blockbuster in recent memory. And it's not that I'm saying not that they're bad actors, but that the actors that they chose don't relate to each other in the way that they should. There was a lot of talk about how Tim Robbins is he plays Peter Sarsgaard's father. And Tim Robbins was born in 1958. Peter Sarsgaard was born in 1971. So they're like 12 years apart. And not only do they look the same age, they don't even look like they're related to one another.
They also made Peter Sarsgaard look much older.
Yeah, Peter Sarsgaard could theoretically be older than the Tim Robbins character.
He looks like he could be Tim Robbins' brother, except they don't look anything alike, so they don't look like they're related at all.
Mm-hmm.
But then you go down the line where they add in this element where, I think one of the huge problems we haven't even addressed, even though I think Devindra said he thought Peter Sarsgaard was good in the movie, his character I just thought was very poorly handled in every conceivable way.
I just think he had a lot of he really invested himself.
Yeah, good performance, but bad character.
Was it a good performance? Really?
I think he did this really cool Scream Queen thing that
he did a lot of screaming.
Think Peter Sarsgaard ever. Yeah, he's never really done that. It's he really just put himself in that crazy mad scientist role. But it's a terrible role.
When you talk about one-note performances, he's literally like screaming one note. I think it's like a B flat over an A minor, just over and over, just over and over.
Here's the thing though. He has a. Sorry, what?
Matt, you were going to say we haven't addressed the big problem with the movie.
Yeah, he is supposed to be childhood friends or like old friends with Hal Jordan. And with Carol Ferris, and Peter Sarsgaard is like 5 years older than Ryan Reynolds, and Ryan Reynolds is like 11 years older than Blake Lively. It's like, in what universe do all these people grow up together? They don't look like they relate to one another at all, and then they never interact until near the third act.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden, they're like, "Hey, my old friend Hector Hammond, what are you doing here?" Like,
I think that's the bigger problem because
they
totally live very far apart. So it's like, you haven't seen this guy in like what sounds like years? Okay.
They just sort of throw in that they're all old friends out of nowhere, like 45 well, not even more than 45 minutes, probably more like an hour and 15 minutes.
Yeah.
On a script level, that the relationship between those characters is a colossal failure. I think we can agree on that. Adam,
fun fact about the casting: the voice of Parallax in this is actually the voice of Mr. Krabs.
Again, it all comes full circle.
It does, doesn't it? But I wanted to comment on what Matt was saying about the casting. I don't think the problem was with the casting, aside from Blake Lively, who I thought was terrible. But I really do think it was an issue of the screenwriting and the character work, and that, like you described, like these characters have like 2 scenes interacting with each other, and I'm referring to like Peter Sarsgaard. Like he at one point kind of says a couple words to Hal Jordan, and then he says a couple words to Blake Lively's character, and that's it. That's sort of all the character work we get to show that these guys have relationships with one another. I mean, I don't think the age issue doesn't really bother me at all. It's just the fact that these fucking characters clearly don't know each other or care about each other.
And it's weird because there's so much... Okay, go ahead.
Oh, that was the end of my sentence.
Okay. I'm just saying it's weird because there is so much potential for that. Because they do sort of go into this sort of rivalry between Hector Hammond and Hal Jordan. And like how we bring up Hal Jordan's life is not that bad. That is sort of a great thing to set up at the beginning. Yeah. Whereas Hector is like, man, my life does really suck. And what the hell is Hal Jordan moping about? And they sort of touch on that later in the film. They're like, well, look at what you evolved into, dude. It's like, seriously? But yeah, that's a ton of wasted potential. Yep. And then they sort of just, I guess I can't say anything, but nothing really happens with the Hector Hammond character either. He's just
it is completely wasted as a character. Like, he is about as unnecessary as the killer character in Faster with Dwayne Johnson. Which, if you've seen that movie, like that is a complete like cipher of a character that ends up. I mean, I'm not going to say what happens, but it ends up not really going anywhere.
His whole arc is just awful, and then the fact that they include this, like his own daddy issues and his own father, I guess for the to mirror Hal Jordan's plight, but that that the father and the son look nothing alike, they're the same age, and that they add nothing to the movie really.
I do have to point out, by the way, when I tweeted about the age difference, because the minute I got home, I was like, wow, they really did not look like father and son. And if anything, Peter Sarsgaard looked like Tim Robbins' father, not the other way around. I got a bunch of people jumping down my throat about the fact that Harrison Ford and like Sean Connery are only like 10 years apart or something along those lines. And they were able to pull it off in Indiana Jones and The Last Crusade
because they made Sean Connery look older.
Yeah, they made Sean Connery look older. They actually put effort
on a theoretical level if it worked, but they don't. They just they made Peter Sarsgaard look so old.
Yes.
Why did they make him look so old if he's supposed to be the same age as Hal Jordan and Blake Lively, roughly, approximately? Why does he look like he's older than Tim Robbins? It doesn't make any sense.
Yeah. Well. I think we have a lot more things to say about this in spoilers, so let's move into that pretty quickly. But any other thoughts about this film, other than that we think it's probably not a good use of your time to see it in theaters?
It may be a decent matinee if you like comic book movies. Like, I think I had more fun watching this than I did Thor, and I'm totally fine saying that. But it's definitely not worth a watch for most people, and I guess it's just a shame how much was wasted, and definitely see in 2D. I did not see the 3D, but I have not heard good things.
Yeah.
The one other non-spoiler thing I would say is more as a question, which is, did anyone else feel like Ryan Reynolds, or did anyone feel like Green Lantern looked more like Ryan Reynolds when he was wearing his mask than when he was not wearing his mask? Because I felt like the mask did nothing to mask his identity. I actually felt he looked more like Ryan Reynolds.
I did like that they actually pointed that out.
They totally make fun of the whole having that as actual disguise.
Well, a little bit. They did a little bit, but I mean, I guess we shouldn't. That maybe we'll discuss more in spoilers.
Yeah. Actually, I think that's arguably my favorite scene in the movie was when they made fun of that trope in comic books.
All right, let's move into spoilers, guys. All right, spoilers for the Green Lantern starting now. If you don't want to hear the ending of this film, stop listening. So, guys, Green Lantern spoilers. Oh, yeah, we didn't talk about Mark Strong's performance as Sinestro in the non-spoiler section.
A little.
But I thought he was fantastic and totally wasted in this film. Like he
was great.
He radiated this kind of confidence and this kind of like badassness that I found really enjoyable.
He radiated Mark Strong, basically, because that is consistently he is good. Like he brings his all to any role that he's usually in. But I also loved how enigmatic Sinestro was. Like I get a sense. I haven't read the comics, but I get a sense he's not going to be a good guy forever.
Well, did you guys see the post credits sequence with Sinestro?
Oh no, I didn't see it.
Did anyone?
Mid credits, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Did anyone see it?
Your assumptions are correct, Devindra.
Well, so first of all, someone describe the scene that we're talking about right now.
Out of fucking nowhere, Sinestro's like, damn, this ring looks pretty cool. It's yellow. And he puts it on, and it's like, yeah.
I guess it doesn't help that his name is almost sinister.
Yeah,
so.
it makes they don't seed that anywhere in the entire film. Like I guess
they do.
Well, I guess the idea
he's the one who wanted to make it. So
yeah, he actually does have like one scene where he's like, "Oh, we can harness the power of fear."
Yeah, he just convinced the Immortals to build a fear ring, Dave. So that is a pretty big setup.
The problem isn't that he does it. The problem is that he does it like after the movie is over, after the reason that he had to put it on in the first place is gone.
Yeah.
And he just randomly is like, man, they can put it on now.
Yeah, because he spent the whole movie.
Very poor motivation behind.
That's what I'm saying. He spent the whole movie sort of defending the integrity of the lanterns, and now
Yeah, that was good. That was going to be like a last resort.
Exactly.
Ideally, that's the sort of thing that if in a world where this movie was a huge hit, you have a second movie where like Hal Jordan and Sinestro are buddies, but they start to kind of fall apart or something, and then at the end of that movie, Sinestro has his sort of turn to the dark side, and then that would be the appropriate.
And Hal Jordan gets shot in the spine and becomes paralyzed.
Anyway,
but yeah, Mark Strong was awesome. Sinestro was awesome.
Mm-hmm.
I wasn't even sitting there going, oh, this is Mark Strong's really good, or is that makeup, or is that motion capture? Like he was just the guy. You didn't think about any of that because he was so good in that role.
Yeah, agreed.
Matt Singer. Well, Matt Singer, you had some thoughts on the ending of this film because you had said that you had a lot of things to say about the spoilers for this.
Well, it wasn't so much the ending, but it was just several elements of the plot that I felt made absolutely no sense.
Lay it on me.
Okay, so I believe it's the first big fight between Green Lantern and Hector Hammond. Green Lantern comes in and they fight and they lay on the floor together and they touch each other's foreheads in a weird way. Yeah. And then the scene ends with Green Lantern defeating him and Peter Sarsgaard, on his knees screaming, as every scene involving Peter Sarsgaard ends with him on his knees screaming. And then I might be incorrect here, but if I remember correctly, there's a dissolve from Green Lantern in that scene to the next scene where he's Hal Jordan again in his apartment moping, as he does a lot.
Yes.
And then then that scene occurs, and then the very next scene is Hector Hammond back in his apartment, like rolling around, writhing in pain, screaming some more. So the implication is that they fought, and then Hal Jordan basically said,
they just went home.
I'm just going to leave. I'm not going to tie you up. I'm not going to imprison you. I'm not going to bring you to the Green Lantern Corps. I'm not going to give you to the police. I'm just going to let you be and think about what you've done.
No, well, I believe...
I thought he kicked him into, the fire.
Yeah, he kicks him into, the fog and then, vanishes.
He thought, oh, well, he's dead.
Yeah. He kind of, the Hector Hammond character vanishes at the end of that scene. So,
he does?
Yeah, he does. Yeah. He does vanish into the fog. More troubling to me is... There's a scene at the end, and you guys can explain this to me, right? Parallax, comes in through the wall, right? And he goes to Hector Hammond, and he's like, "You have failed me." And then he totally eats Hector Hammond. What did he fail him at doing? What was he supposed to do? What was Hector Hammond supposed to do that he failed at doing?
I think he was supposed to kill the Green Lantern. That seemed pretty...
But it wasn't like he was communicating with him and telling him.
Yeah, there was no scene where they're saying, you got to kill the Green Lantern for me. Was there?
A lot of the films kind of like that, though, where it's just they kind of say, oh, well, you have this ring and it gives you information and stuff, and you just know stuff. So then there's a lot of moments in the film where it's what's happening? Oh, I guess he just knows. He knows what's going on. I have no idea what's going on, but he knows what's going on.
There's an assumption that there's a psychic link going on, because when Hal Jordan touches him and he sees the memories of Parallax, that sort of... There's some sort of connection there.
Fair enough. But even so, what is the purpose of that from a dramatic perspective if we don't know what Hector Hammond was supposed to do?
Yeah, if you have anything like that in a film where stuff is being communicated psychically, you really need to figure out a way to communicate that information to the audience.
I love how selective the psychic stuff is. When Ryan Reynolds wakes up from his space trip. And they're like, oh, yeah, he's like, why do I know everything? And it's like, well, because we, put it inside your brain. And yet, at the same time, there's still, tons of information that Ryan Reynolds doesn't know and needs to ask questions about. It's like, why even bother with that if you're going to explain it to us again? Why bother with that plot point if you're going to have someone explain it to Ryan Reynolds again anyway?
Yeah.
Another question I had. If Hal Jordan, he goes, he gets the ring, he goes to OA, he's trained, he decides he can't handle it, and he quits. if he quits, why did they let him keep the ring?
Yeah, he quits and he's like, I'm still a Green Lantern, but I'm just not part of the team.
Well, he literally says like, I quit.
Yeah,
he says that
they were probably like, he'll be back. He'll be back. Don't worry.
You know what? You were such a good sport as a parting gift. We're going to let you keep the ring. It's a souvenir of your time here.
But please don't give it to any bad guys.
Of you with Sinestro. You can frame that. It makes a lovely gift.
Yeah,
but the interaction you're describing like feels again like a lot of the movie where it's like stuff just kind of happens in this movie.
Yeah,
and it felt to me like there was a different, like the script of this movie was probably radically different than the movie that was made. And I think there's a lot of scenes, like the scene that I mentioned, which you're saying that he vanishes in the, or whatever. It's, or this scene that just doesn't make any sense. Like there were scenes where I was like wondering whether they were just completely re-edited in the editing room from the order they were originally in. Like the whole thing where he gets the ring, he gets the lantern, and he's playing around with it in his apartment, and he says the oath, and he like figures out how to use it, and then Blake Lively interrupts, and then there's like they have a whole pointless scene in a bar, and then there's another scene where he gets in a fight, and then finally after that he accidentally activates the ring somehow, which all of a sudden sends him off into outer space. It's like, why didn't that happen immediately after he first uses the ring? What was the point of all that extra stuff in the middle? And why does it suddenly, like I've read hundreds and hundreds of Green Lantern comic books, and I don't understand the movie. What does that say? If I can't figure out the rules of how the ring works, and I know arguably more than any human being should know about how that ring works.
And the thing is, I wouldn't even really mind not understanding like why stuff was happening if it actually had some sort of like proper sense of like rhythm or flow. But the pacing of this movie is all over the place, and like whenever you sort of cut back and forth in between the action with Hal Jordan and then Hector Hammond, who takes up like a huge chunk of the film, even though he ultimately is meaningless to the narrative. I don't know. Like when I was saying like stuff just happens, I really mean that. Like the whole thing when he actually gets picked up by the fucking green orb, like that seems like something that in an earlier time the filmmakers would have said like, oh well, we're not just going to have like a fucking orb appear out of nowhere and just grab him and then take him to the location, right? That we need to actually set that up somehow. Let's actually like have him like witness this green thing in the distance and like not just have him going to his car and it's like gets like fucking swooped up by it. I don't know, just everything in the film just kind of felt like awkward. And ultimately, yeah, like what you sort of get out of it. The only thing, actually, I did, again, I'm going to reference the action. I think that's what had the best rhythm in the film. Whenever the movie got to some action, and I feel like that's kind of Martin Campbell's strong suit. He really has a good sense of action beats, and I think there's some very cool moments of Hal Jordan using his ring abilities.
Yeah, I think especially towards the end, like I really enjoyed the final showdown because, yeah, what are you going to do when you have this giant, like, unbeatable ball of fear? You take it to the sun.
Yeah, hurl it into the sun. Obviously, sun is what combats fear. I mean, it's obvious.
The way they set that up, I've referenced this before. Like, I hate this like horrible screenwriting trope where it's like very, very poorly setting up what's going to come back later. It's like, so you have this training montage where everything has sort of a reasonable place in the scene. It's like, oh, he's like creating a Gatling gun, a sword, stuff like that. But then it's like, out of nowhere, one of the fucking Green Lanterns is like, here is a planet, here's a sun, and look at the power of the gravity. And it's like, the bigger you are, like the faster you burn. And it's like, oh man, I wonder if this is going to come back later.
Of course it
will. Well, then again, it may not, because there are so many scenes in that movie that don't end up coming back. What was the point of the scene where he goes to visit his family and his nephew?
For the cars, the nephew had the cars.
Oh yeah, and he needed to create a racetrack to save that helicopter.
And now you know exactly why that scene is still in the movie, because otherwise you'd go, why is he creating a Hot Wheels track? But there's no other reason for those scenes to be in the movie. They don't. None of those characters appear again. He doesn't even save the nephew. You keep waiting for like the nephew to be stuck, being attacked by Parallax when Parallax descends on the city or something. That never even happens.
Yeah. Man, I've seen both of those scenes, and I still don't understand why he creates a Hot Wheels track.
It came to mind.
I mean, okay, like really? Okay, you have a helicopter descending at a really rapid rate of speed, and the first thing that comes to your mind is, let's put it on an elaborate track that races through this entire crowd of people. Like, that is what you're going to do with your powers.
This is what I was talking about earlier with his mask and all that stuff. Yes, it's kind of funny how like his buddy and Carol they figure out that he's Green Lantern.
Yeah.
But he seemed to know like everyone at that party. Shouldn't everyone at that party be like, "Holy crap, where did
I think
Hal
they were
Jordan-"
distracted by the giant race car track that just appeared above their
No,
head.
but there's that moment where they're at the
He's
front.
standing there in front of all
Yeah,
of
he's
them.
standing in front of all of them.
You know, they didn't know him as well as
Man.
Carol. I don't know. Some bullshit. But you know,
I mean,
what
like,
they
they even have it take a while for Blake Lively to actually recognize him.
She's a little slow on the uptake.
Devindra, you are so nice to this movie. It's actually it's kind of adorable.
Well, Dave, you also have you can't tell tone very well, so I am kind of joking here. I do think it's funny though that the movie does make fun of the race car thing as well, which I think executed in the film looks terrible. It doesn't make any sense. But then at the least the friend is like, seriously, that's all you can come up with. But the thing is, the film, like, it has some good action. I wish it had more, because really this is a character where you have so much potential. You have unlimited potential, really, to do anything in terms of action. And I love I think the final set piece works really well.
Well, I mean, there's only like basically 3 action scenes in the whole movie.
Right.
I do like the only interesting action scene, in my opinion, was the scene between Hector Hammond and Green Lantern. Like, that's when you have 2 like telekinetic people using their powers against each other in interesting ways. Like, one of the coolest
each other on the forehead.
Yeah, one of the coolest concepts was when like the Angela Bassett character, who's in this movie for some reason, she like falls, and then the Green Lantern creates like green like water like under her to like slow her fall. First of all, why didn't he do that for the helicopter? And second of all, that's just a cool concept to do that.
Super cool.
But then that's like the only good scene.
That's a lot of water to create.
Yeah, definitely. But the but then like the final action scene, it's really cool how they got all those extras and this gigantic thing to like attack them. But ultimately,
they put a lot of money into that scene.
Yeah, but ultimately,
it was on the screen.
But ultimately, it's just this like one like kind of superpowered guy against another superpowered guy, like both of them like sending energy beams at each other, and like that's
sending them at each other awesomely.
Yeah, but like I find it anticlimactic when you have these like.
You didn't like Green Lantern versus the poop monster?
Yeah, it just was very anticlimactic because you like, okay, the poop monster attacks them, and then Green Lantern's like shielding them. He recites the oath, and then boom, like they're off into space. It's like, it's not interesting in terms of action. I don't find it interesting. Like it's hard. I don't know what would have been interesting because you have this gigantic amorphous blob, but I know that's not it. Like whatever happened here.
Well, I mean, they painted themselves into a corner by making that the main villain of the movie.
Yeah.
And not really doing much with it, really.
I don't think that's what Parallax looks like. They made a conscious decision to make him look like a poop monster.
He does not look like that in the comic books, no.
That's a damn shame. But one good thing about that is at least that particular part of the scene doesn't last for very long.
Yes.
Like they goes through that and then they're in space, which is like that's sort of if you have a superhero movie, right, and you have characters who can fly in space, wondering why this didn't really happen in Superman Returns. But like we have the technology. Let's have giant space battles. And this one had a giant space battle, or sort of, right in front of the sun, which, again, I don't know if his powers will protect him from burning up being so close to the sun, but at least it looked cool. And,
and David, you have to admit, it looked expensive.
It definitely looked really expensive.
The problems with that movie weren't the way I didn't think were the way it looked. It was just all of these scenes we keep mentioning that make no sense and are totally superfluous. Like the scene with the family. Like the scene. Why? How about another one that made no sense? The scene where he's the orb picks him up and sends him into outer space, and he flies to the planet. And there's a fade to white, I think.
Yeah.
And then he's in that alien probing chamber, and he's naked and he's being probed. And then
except he's not naked because it's PG-13. Yeah. So he has underwear on for some reason.
He has underwear on, and then the thing is like it goes into his heart, or there's like a red spot on his heart.
Right.
What was the point of all that?
That was the memories, man.
That was for the ladies.
Those really dumb memories.
I think you're absolutely right, Dave. Yeah. I think that is what it was for.
It is funny though, like given what I think this movie does a few things well. Thor does some things well too. if you took the good things between these two movies and put it in one movie, I think you'd have a good movie. Unfortunately, they're two very different movies, completely
the
separate.
thing is, this movie does like a few things right, and that makes it more like it's not a complete disaster, and that's kind of makes it more frustrating. You know, talking about that last action scene, what is interesting is like Green Lantern having to save civilians from Parallax. And like the various ways he does that, like that's cool. But they did such a limited job with that. You know what I mean? Like there's that one woman where he like creates an anti-tank gun or whatever, and that's cool. Like to see him like continue to do that would have been awesome. But that lasts like 30 seconds. Another thing that I thought was kind of cool was the horror of hearing other people's thoughts. You know, like Peter Sarsgaard gets like mind reading capabilities for some reason during this movie, and it really would be a terrible thing to hear what other people think of you. Like, even if they like you, you know, like, it still would be very difficult to navigate. And that's one thing that the movie got right, was, like, how much pain and suffering someone would go through if they heard
probably not the best
thoughts.
thing for an antisocial geek, it looks like.
Yeah.
You know?
Didn't you think he was a little hard on his dad? What was the dad's? He was angry at the dad for helping him get a job? Isn't that what fathers supposed to do? Help their kids?
I think
network?
so. But also, like, there's this whole thing about, like, him feeling like his dad feels he's worthless or something. And then it's like, they could have tapped into the Hal Jordan, like, competition more, because clearly his dad wishes Hal Jordan was his son, because we've never seen this plot line before. But, you know, it's like...
Oh, and apparently, Peter Sarsgaard, by the way, I think it's a last-second plot twist, is Peter Sarsgaard is also in love with the Blake Lively character. So it's like all this motivation that you could have had to create some compelling character drama is completely squandered.
Yeah,
And,
it's just a throwaway line, basically. It's like, by the way, there are stakes here. just so the audience is aware before this goes down.
Yeah. So a huge bundle of wasted opportunity, really. Is what
it's funny that I think we've all agreed that there are good elements, but I don't think we've really talked about any of them.
Yeah, that's true.
No, we talked about the action and the
action.
I think who did well, and
the action, the effects. Mark Strong.
I really would have liked to see more of the Green Lantern characters. Actually, a lot of people I've seen like shitting on the visuals of the film. I kind of liked the goofy, cheesy vibe of like all the alien characters. I would have loved to see them actually delve deeper into that world. And actually have, I said this before, but like actually have relationships with the alien characters. But instead, no, they're just kind of there to be sort of these visuals with voices, and that's all they exist for. They don't actually really have much character beyond that.
I really enjoyed the scenes with the alien characters, especially when like there are a ton of them grouped around. And if you look closely, like every one of those characters is really different.
Yeah.
And really weird.
Yeah.
I appreciated that. Like
very
that was something
cool.
where like, not to bring up Thor again, but you know, in Thor, when we're with the ice giants, they're all the same. They all look the same, even the king ice giant. So it's like this, like these are throwaway background characters, and there's at least a little attention paid to them. I appreciated that.
Yeah. No,
well, that's straight out of the comic though. The Green Lanterns from the comic, like
right.
Yeah. There's a lot of variety.
But it's being faithful to the comic book, isn't that the thing?
Yes, and I would have loved for them to, if they're actually being even more faithful, they would have explored more of the aliens as opposed to having them.
Well, you can't have it both ways. Weren't you guys also complaining that they were being too faithful to the whole idea of emotions and fear? I mean, that's all the comic book as well. I mean, that is what it is.
That's really what I'm saying, though. Is like I feel like the balance they struck was basically like for like the worst in both ways, in both regards. It was cheesy while also being ultimately like too terrifying for kids. Because we haven't mentioned that at all. How fucking freaky like was some of the like the death scenes in this movie. Like people die in some pretty horrible ways. Parallax, when he like sucks out their soul, you basically like see these like Well, he's like. I assume it's supposed to be their fear because it's like these yellow fucking
skeleton things.
Skeletons being like ripped from their bodies, and like when fucking Hammond dies, when Peter Sarsgaard dies, he like drops down into like this like mush of skeleton. It's just like collapses.
Isn't it weird though that like he sucks out their skeletons? They're like soul skeletons, but then all he leaves behind is a skeleton. Yeah. I thought that was kind of strange.
Yeah, that is kind of bizarre.
Shouldn't he leave behind a pile of goo or something?
I was listening to the Movie BS podcast with Baron Snyder, which is really hilarious podcast, and they pointed out Parallax, like they apparently trapped him and entombed him. They didn't really do that much to make sure he stayed trapped, though, did they? Like, he broke out in a suspiciously easy way.
The ice kind of broke, and it was like, hey.
He found these guys, and they're like, okay, well, that's enough. You know, like, they really got to lock that stuff down a little bit.
Yeah,
more.
also, there should have been, like, a big warning. Do not approach giant fear-sucking alien.
Yeah, that's true. There probably should have been some sort of warning sign.
Put up a sign, you know, do something.
At least a sign.
Yeah.
It's like they can create anything out of their willpower. They can't create a fucking sign to warn people about this.
But that's also like a classic comic book trope. I mean, they always capture the villain and put him in some unescapable, jail of some kind, and and inevitably they escape.
I think what I'm saying is, Matt, that this didn't even appear to be unescapable.
It was too easy. Okay.
It was like they froze him in ice, and they're like, he's never going to break out of this.
Mm-hmm. You know what, guys? I will say this: like, if for some reason there is another one of these films that maybe more attention could be paid to the script or something, I don't think I would mind seeing that, because there is so much potential here. Like, I love the very first shot of this film, where it just opens on that like alien landscape, and you're zooming in, and it's like everything you're looking at here just looks like interesting. You see this moon in the background with the giant crater. It's like a very typical sci-fi image, but at the same time, I think it was handled really well, and it really set up the movie well. I just wish the movie, we are introduced to so much cool stuff. The Green Lantern powers, the aliens, and they're just kind of forgotten. So hopefully, maybe we'll get another shot at it, something that can really take advantage of all this.
I don't know if I would want a sequel, because for me, even though, yes, it would be cool to see them sort of fulfill the potential of Green Lantern's powers and stuff, but some of the core elements of this film, I don't really see how they can fix. The character of Hal Jordan, he's completely wasted. It's like, I don't really want to go on another adventure with this guy. Even though I really like Ryan Reynolds, and I don't think he plays the character poorly. I just think the character itself is handled disastrously.
But I do think like there's potential. Like if it seems like a script level issue, and maybe they were really pushing to get this movie out quickly, because certain elements of it does feel rushed. Like the edits, some scene cuts are just ridiculous. Like Hal Jordan is on Earth, and then all of a sudden he's at the Immortals' place on the other planet, and it's like that stuff is it's confusing. Maybe with a little more attention, there could be something here.
I think they do deserve a little bit of credit for, like Devindra was saying, going all out with the aliens, the landscape. They really went for it. They didn't soft pedal it, and I appreciated that. It is surprising though how much harder seemingly it is to do like human interactions, to have like two human beings talking to one another in a believable and interesting way, than it is to create an entire alien race, multiple alien races, thousands of aliens all interacting in an alien landscape. That they can do, but having two people sit in an office and talk in an interesting way, that was an unclearable hurdle.
I guess it doesn't help that Blake Lively is like entirely made out of CG. So if she were a real person, that may have helped this movie.
Speaking of which, did any of you see this film in 3D?
I did.
No.
And did you find it? Did you find it worthwhile?
I've noticed a recurring thing about anytime I've seen a movie in 3D where I actually think it's actually, if it's live action and like I actually find the 3D acceptable, everyone else is just sort of unanimous in that the 3D is always terrible. Apparently the only thing that's ever looked good is Avatar. Although I honestly would say like this to me looked almost on par with Avatar in 3D.
Interesting. All right, yeah. Some people have been saying it's the best 3D conversion yet. I don't know.
Because a lot of it, the 3D, is also shot obviously. I mean, like Avatar, the stuff that looks best in 3D is the animated stuff. And also, like Avatar, the stuff that looks the worst is the live action stuff. But still, like I do think like it looks decent in 3D. I don't think it's worth paying extra for. I'm kind of I've come to a place where it's like if it's animated entirely, I'll see it in 3D. Otherwise, it's not worth paying extra for.
I agree completely.
Thor was kind of the movie for me that like broke the camel's back.
It looks better than Thor, I think.
Because the 3D and I couldn't see I literally could not see what was going on in that movie at times because of the 3D was so dark, like on the ice planet. So that was where I was like, I got to be able to see what's going on in this, So that's why I specifically went to see this one in 2D.
All right. Well, on that note, guys, I think we can probably wrap things up for this week's episode of the Slash Filmcast. Yeah. Any other thoughts on Green Lantern before we?
We should really find a couple more positives.
Why don't we save those for the After Dark, if we can? Because we're coming up on 2 hours here. So Let's wrap things up for this week's episode of the Slash Filmcast. Music for this episode will hopefully come courtesy of the Green Lantern soundtrack. You can find every single episode of the Slash Filmcast at slashfilmcast.com. You can email us at slashfilmcast@gmail.com. Let us know what you think of the show. Let us also know what you thought of Green Lantern. Finally, and I forgot to do this earlier on in the show, we want to give a big shout out to all the people that donated to the Slash Filmcast. A big thanks to Andrew Little from the United Kingdom, Dale Bartlett from Australia for your generous donations. Also, thank you to Sam Gilbert, Wen Miller, and Melanie Beasley for becoming recurring donors at the rate of $2 per month. You can always donate and support the show, help pay for our movie tickets to crap films such as Green Lantern by going to slashfilmcast.com and using the links on the left-hand side of the page. So I think that's going to be it for this week's episode of the Slash Filmcast. Matt Singer, where can we find more of your work on the internet this week?
Well, I'm writing daily at ifc.com/news, and you can follow me on Twitter at twitter.com/MattSinger.
Devindra Hardwar?
You can find me on Twitter at twitter.com/Devindra. I write about technology at venturebeat.com, and I do a tech podcast at thedrilldown.com. Everything else I do is at devindra.org.
Adam Quigley?
slashfilm.com and twitter.com/alwayswatching.
You can find me at davechen.net. Twitter.com/DaveChensky, that's Dave Chen, SKY, and Tobolowskifiles.com, which is the storytelling podcast I do with actor Stephen Tobolowsky. Stephen Tobolowsky, by the way, recently appeared on the Kevin Pollak Chat Show, as well as Sklarbo Country, both very popular podcasts to promote the Tobolowsky Files, and he did a pretty awesome job on both. So if you have a chance, check those out in addition to the Tobolowsky Files. That's going to bring us to the end of this week's episode of the Slash Filmcast. We will not be here next week, so there'll be no show. And we may not be here in 2 weeks to do Transformers 3, but there will be an episode of Transformers 3 that week sometime. It may or may not be on Sunday night. Do follow us on Twitter to find out when it's going on. Again, twitter.com/DaveChensky is where you can follow me, and also the other guys. I'm not going to repeat their stuff. You really only need